So good morning, everybody, and thanks very much for joining us today. We're talking about a really interesting topic, something called safeguarded copy, which is really to protecting you from the worst when you get subjected to, say, a ransomware attack. And got joined today by one of our partners, Chile, who have they're talking to customers about this, they're implementing it. And without further ado, I'll pass over to Ben from Chile to give you an overview, and then Jack will be showing a bit more detail and some live demos. So, Ben.
Thanks very much, Paul. Yep, thank you everybody for joining the WebEx this morning. As Paul mentioned, we're going to talk about safeguarded copy, and really safeguarded copy and what it delivers, which is operational resilience for IBM I workloads. Just a very quick piece about who we are. So yeah, we're an IBM partner, 20 years experience. We're going to talk about how we use the IBM flash system storage to enhance the availability of workloads running on the Power system. Now, these slides that we're going to go through today, we're going to refer to IBM I workloads primarily, but in all honesty, you can substitute any workload on Power. So if it's AIX or Linux, if you're running Windows type workloads, we can still do the same type of protection and recovery. The execution of some of the tasks may not be exactly the same, but the concepts that we're going to talk about, they match absolutely perfectly. So some of the terms we'll discuss today, I'm sure you're all familiar with them, but I just want to run through them very quickly. I will do it quickly. You can stop and go through them in a bit more detail if you want to look at the recording later on. So the first thing we're going to talk about is IBM Cyber Vault. So it's a blueprint really for ransomware recovery. Then we want to talk about primary and secondary workloads. So it's the identification of the primary workload. Really, in a nutshell, these are the ones that your business absolutely must have up and running to deliver a service to the end user. So if we think of, I've got my Power system with my banking application, I've got a Windows server with running print functionality in the office, then obviously the Power server is our primary, printing is probably our secondary. We could do without that. Then we'll talk about operational resilience. So this is defined as the ability to prevent, adapt and respond to, recover and learn from operational disruption. We've all got this in place already. So when you think about fault-tolerant hardware, software that replicates between two systems, the backups that we do, the endpoint security that we have in place, that's all part of operational resilience. And what we'll talk about today is something that just further enhances that. We'll talk about rapid recovery. So when we're talking about systems and the ability to fail over to a system or to bring a system back online, rapid recovery is taking this into the shortest amount of time possible. So what we're talking about here is minutes rather than hours. So we want to be able to provide you a copy of your system within minutes that then you can look at and decide if you're ready to resume the application again. We'll talk about immutable snapshots of data. I think, again, everyone's familiar with that. So just so we're all clear, data's fixed, can't be changed, deleted, encrypted, or modified. So it is the absolute pinnacle of protection, if you like. And then finally, we'll talk about CopyAssure. So CopyAssure is Chile's own offering, and what it does, it takes the enhancements that we've got within the IBM Flash systems to achieve immutable copies. It then takes some of our own software that we've written as part of our managed service, and then it overlays this against the Cyber Vault blueprint, and then it delivers that operational resilience and rapid recovery for your applications. So just a couple of words now on the actual IBM Cyber Vault blueprint. So it's the blueprint for ransomware recovery. It's a blueprint, or maybe it's a framework, if you like, probably describes it a little better. And what it does, it shows you the best practices that you should adhere to in order to give yourself the best chance to recover from a ransomware attack, or indeed any cyberware threat, really. It begins with immutable copies. So you're taking copies of your most important data. It then moves on and says, proactive monitoring is important to monitor your environment against attack. It then covers test and validation of the data. Now, for us, that's the most important step. If you don't test and validate any of the immutable copies that you take, then you can't be certain that you can recover to them. And then finally, it goes on to rapid recovery, which is saying if you've tested and you've validated a copy, it's on your primary storage, you can use that copy for a very quick recovery into a safe room or a clean environment. So why is this important? I really don't need to go through this in any detail whatsoever. We're all aware of cyber attacks, ransomware, cyber warfare. The next slide is probably a little better, and we'll probably need to go into a little bit more detail. if you're not aware of the MITRE attack framework, then I would encourage you to get on the website, Google it, have a look. It's a non-profit organization. What they do here is they provide information to us against all the threat actors and their preferred methods of threat. You can filter this down by whatever sector you're in. So if you're retail, financial, distribution, you can filter it down by whatever hardware you have in place. So interesting enough, when you do the filter, there's enterprise systems. Those enterprise systems cover all the workloads except what we want to see, which is our AIX and our IBM I workloads that run on Power. Now, it does have Linux. So I guess when you look at Linux, you can reference that back to AIX because it's a similar Unix-based operating system. You can also consider that any BIOS partitions that you've got running, which is running a cut-down version of AIX, will be applicable to the Linux one, but it doesn't have IBM I. Now, a few weeks back, we ran a brunch and learn with a partner of ours, Silent Signal, over in Hungary. Now, these guys are actively looking at ways in which threat actors look to exploit the IBM I power system and AIX workloads. They're also looking at how they can map them onto the MITRE attack framework. So as soon as I have any more information about that, we'll no doubt publish it and we'll find another brunch and learn around how we can really drill down on what we should be looking for and where people are looking to exploit our workloads today. Now, the final piece of why this is important to us is really around regulation. So on the next slide, we talk about FCA and DORA. So there's rules and guidance which is there today, and which talks around data and operational. Now, at the moment, in our guidance, if I understand it correctly, we all need to be compliant by 2025. So it's all around identifying your primary workload, having this risk assessment framework in place that shows your data and operational resilience. Now, as we go through the slides today, what we'll be able to say is, look, this is how CopyAssure fits into this, and this is how you can use it to report against this regulation. So how does operational resilience, how do we achieve it through CopyAssure, and where really does it fit? Because as I've said before, we've currently got things around operational resilience in place. So if you look at the slide here, we've got a live production power server running an AIX or an IBM I workload. And typically what we've got in place, we've got a HA disaster recovery power server, again, AIX, IBM I workload, and we're doing some replication between the two. We could be replicating at a storage level, we could be replicating through a software product. And we're not really saying that we need to get rid of this, because this is still an absolutely valid part of operational resilience. But by its nature, if you get bad data on your production server, it's going to replicate that bad data across the HA. So while it covers you for, you know, a mass hardware failure, natural disasters, power instance at your data center, it's not going to cover against the threats that we're seeing today, which is cyber threat, which is increasing in today's world. So when we talk about CopyAssure, CopyAssure fits over the top of these two current infrastructure deployments, if you like, and complements them. Now, it's using IBM flash system storage. From that IBM flash system storage, we identify where our critical workloads are. Then we get workloads that are taking an immutable snapshot of these workloads that are fast to recover, but also we've got proven recovery as well. So as I said earlier, the test and validation piece that we encourage people to do is very, very important. But what CopyAssure does is it provides you with that test and validation and automatically gives you that level of comfort that you really need. Finally, on the next slide, we just go through really what position you'd be in currently today. So if you think about the backup we're doing now, we're all doing immutable backups with well, we should be. We're taking a copy to tape. We take that tape and we offsite it. So if we look at the grey timeline, the no cyber resilience, what you're looking at with recovery there is you're going to retrieve your tape, you're going to rebuild your system, then you've had no test or recovery of this backup. So first of all, you've got to hope that you can back it up and you've backed up the correct information. Then when you get the system back online, do you know if any of your data has been compromised? So then you have to go through your test and validation at that point. If you fail, then you're going back to the previous night's backup and so on and so forth. So we can see that very quickly, depending on the size of your system. Typically a restore is somewhere between 24 and 48 hours, but this can go into weeks if you're doing multiple restores of data until you find the clean data that you need to get the application up and running. So we talk about primary workload recovery and the cyber resilience part. So data and operational resilience by using an immutable copy of your data, which has been tested and validated, and it sits on the primary storage. So it's sat next to your current workload. So you can boot within seconds. Seconds, minutes is probably more realistic. And you're booting into a safe environment that then you can perform forensics on. So that was just my very quick attempt, and I've gone through it really quickly. I apologize for that. Just to set the scene of what we're looking to achieve, I'm going to hand over to Jack now and just ask to go through some of the details around how CopyAssure then fits into and provides us immutability.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ben. Yeah, so thank you all for your time here today, and great introduction there, so thanks a lot for that. So what we're actually, the very first slide said, we are a technology first company. So we're very fortunate actually, and I work in the professional services team, that when a new IBM product comes out, in this case, the IBM Flash System 5200, we have it in the office, we demo it, and we put it through its paces. Now, with IBM Flash System block storage, there are software releases that come with the hardware. One of those software releases was a feature called IBM Safeguarded Copy. And IBM Safeguarded Copy allows us to take immutable snapshots on the production Flash System block storage device. So as Ben mentioned before, we still have our DR capability, and we still do our backups, we still have our HA, but in comparison to a traditional backup, where Safeguarded Copy fits in, it's an immutable backup on that production's Flash System device. So if we take the Cyber Vault blueprint where rapid recovery was key, this really plays into that quadrant there. So very quickly, in comparison to a traditional tape backup or a backup to cloud, if you think about those and having to recover those, there's quite a lot of time in order to pull those back to production. So with the immutable copies being on the production storage, this allowed us to do very quick testing and put it through its paces. So IBM Flash System, just to recap, is a block storage device. It sits in a SAM fabric or iSCSI, and it connects to your IBM iSeries system or potentially a VMware environment as well. Very quickly, in terms of terminology, a volume on the Flash System device represents a drive. So it's a logical drive. In a VMware world, you might have one volume that represents a data store. On IBM I, at the operating system level, you might see 30 drives or 30 spindles. On the Flash System, that's represented by 30 volumes. So IBM, they allowed us to take those production volumes that sit there and take immutable flash copies of them. So those flash copies, they can't be written to, they can't be changed, and they can't be mounted. And under the covers, they are space efficient. So any changes that happen, it's only the data that has changed since the snapshot that gets carried over. So you don't need to have lots and lots of capacity in order to hold multiple snapshots. Okay. So very quickly touched on, Ben mentioned about validation, and we want to understand why is validation important. As we previously mentioned, bad data can still be copied. So if we take these volumes and something malicious happens on the volume, as we take a backup, that backup can either be copied, that bad backup can be copied across, or it can be replicated to the HADR site. So if we're going to talk about validation, what we want to be doing is we want to spin up these immutable snapshots that we take, present them to a clean room environment, and then do some form of validation on them. By doing this, we can avoid corrupt backups or detect corrupt backups more so. We have a known recovery point, and we can initiate a recovery procedure if need be. So the key one here for me is it's a known recovery point. If we're not validating our immutable copies, when we come to recover the immutables at the worst time, potentially an attack has happened, we're going to have a bit of a finger in the air and saying, okay, I've got 20 immutable copies here. Which one of these is going to be a good copy? It's going to be very hard to tell. So what you'd have to do potentially is you have to iterate through those immutable copies. You would then have to spin it up to that clean room environment. That's if you have a clean room environment, and then go through the process of validation. So actually, we identified this problem quite early on. We said we want to be validating immutable copies because these are the business critical ones. These are what's going to bring the warehouse back up if you're a retail business. So we said, okay, how do we go about doing this? Well, first off, this first stage for us to identify how do we validate a system. So first step of validating the system is we want to say, okay, check the system boots without errors. Very basic, very simple, but that goes a long way today and from people we're speaking to. A lot of people aren't validating their backups. They take the backup, they presume it's a good copy, and in the events they have to recover, they're going to hope it's a good copy. So first off, we check the system boots without errors. Secondly, for IBMI, we log on and we navigate through the operating system. We say, okay, the system's up, let's go through it and let's do some integrity testing on the operating system. This is also a place where you can put some sort of scanning engines in, but typically for IBMI, which we are concentrating on for CopyAssure, we're not doing that, but I'll come on to what we're doing specifically on another slide. So we've validated the operating system. The next stage for us is validating an application. So we run mock application queries and ensure that the application is in a good state. For people we're dealing with today, that may mean creating new database tables, navigating through menus, just making sure it's in a good fit state. And then finally, the final form of validation we'd like to see is, okay, maybe user acceptance testing or testing with other systems. Okay. As part of having the 5200 and safeguarded copy at the office at Chile, we were saying, okay, how do we actually do this validation process? What does it look like? So typically, these are the steps we see, and these are the steps we're doing when we're testing safeguarded copy. First off, very basic, I know, but you've got to check the backup's been successful. Once you've done that, you select the backup, the immutable. Once that's complete, you then go on and you're going to recover the backup, or the immutable snapshot in this case. So there's a recovery process in place there. Once you've recovered it, you're then going to map that recovered backup to a validation host, again, a clean room, wherever that may be. And granted, if you're not doing validation on a regular basis and you're actually to recover a backup today, you have a clean room environment to boot that into. A lot of people don't quite have that, so it'd be something you'd be doing on the fly. So we map it to a predefined recovered validation clean room and a host. We then boot the validation host and we sit around waiting for the operating system to hopefully boot okay. Once it's booted, we're going to go onto the system, and if we've not got validation checks or a predefined playbook, we're just going to go onto this system and navigate through and try and somehow cobble together some form of validation. Again, this is the process without automation in place. Potentially, there might be some forensics and further validations to do. Once that's complete, we're going to power off the validation host, and we're going to do a bit of cleanup on the backup itself. So unmapping the volumes and do some sort of recovery process and potentially log the results for future reference. So that's the process we were doing in the office, and we see that's typically the standard process people would be doing today. The next question we were asking ourselves was, okay, we've got these immutable copies, they're great on production storage, they're really quick to validate, really quick to recover, but how often should we be validating? Do you want to be doing it daily? Well, the process for us in the office was taking between an hour and 2 hours to validate a system. So even if you were to do a validation once a day over the course of a working week, that's going to take up a whole operator or administrator's time, a whole day of their time over the course of a working week. So it's not ideal to be doing it daily, and you might have multiple immutable copies during the day. Weekly, monthly, at this point there, we don't feel there's not much value in validating these immutables at that point. And to be honest, these immutables, you're not going to be keeping that many copies. You're not going to be keeping monthly copies on the production storage system. You want to keep as little amount of copies as possible. And then after an attack, I think that speaks for itself. So leading up to it, we want to be validating after every immutable copy. And this is what we've been working on for the last 12 months over at Chile, is how do we do this process? So we come up with a service, and that service, as you may guess, is called CopyAssure. And what CopyAssure does is it takes that previous manual steps, and we've put some automation around it that allows us to automate the recovery, mapping, and validation of each immutable copy that is taken. Okay, so this screen here is a bit of a nice GUI dashboard to show CopyAssure in progress. What you can see before I click play on this is top left, there is an ID ending in 4800. That ID represents an immutable backup on the flash system. Within that immutable backup or snapshot, there may be 50 volumes in that single backup for one system, for example. So I'm going to hit play. It'll take a little minute to kick in. But what's happening in the background here is a new immutable has been taken by safeguarded copy. CopyAssure is now going to use the REST API on the Flash system to say, has a new backup been taken? Has a new backup been taken? Once it sees that a new backup has been taken, we're going to kick off the automation process. Okay, so you can see on the top left, it's now gone to running, and this is CopyAssure running through that recovery process. So step 3 that it's on now is recovering the immutable snapshot. Once that's complete, it's then going to recover and take those recovery volumes and map them to a validation host, map it to the clean room, and wait for that to succeed. Now at this stage here, the volumes have been recovered, they've been mapped, and we're going to power on the system. So we've got that in IBM I, we've got on the virtual HMC, we've got an LPAR there sitting there that we can boot up to. Now, once that's complete and it's all good and it's all booted, we're going to perform some OS validation on it and application validation. This is the real key bit here at Chile that we've been developing, and this is what our monitoring system is based upon as well. So we've had these sort of scripts in place for the last 15 years. To explain the two screens going on here, the output on the left that you see is essentially a 5250 emulator. That is our operating system. What's unique about that screen on the left there is that it's not an operator driving that screen. Okay, so on the screen on the left, there's validation happening. It's not somebody sitting behind a keyboard doing that. What we've got at Chile is we've got this unique scripting language on the right that allows us to navigate the operating system as if we are an operator, and we call it a virtual operator. So in essence, anything you could do on the system, so user acceptance testing, navigating through menus, running application queries, database queries, whatever it may be, we can script that for you in an automatic manner. What's really good about this is every single time we take an immutable copy, we're able to run that validation over the top of that immutable copy. So we've got clients at the moment where we've got 4 production systems, for example. They're taking 6 immutable copies a day, and every immutable copy they take is spun up to a clean room environment, and we run a playbook over the top of it to say, okay, does this system look like a good system? What we can also use this scripting language on the right for is to say, okay, in the event of a real disaster recovery scenario, or sorry, a cyber resilience scenario, what would you be doing on the system to validate it? And let's put those checks in place. So this really fits into the Cyber Vault framework. You know, there's quick, rapid recovery in place there. The logs from what CopyAssure is doing can go off to a SIEM product, so that's not a problem. And we're testing and validating it all in place.
I think also, Jack, one of the things, if we refer back to the earlier slides and we talk about the FCA and DORA and some of the regulations that are in place, part of those regulations are going to include auditing of systems, and as end users will be audited to say, okay, show me how you're doing your testing, where your data and operational resilience is. So the ability to be able to refer back to something like this, the GUI front end, and also the logs being filled in, forwarded off to your SIM product, gives you that, you know, very quick tick in the box for any auditor to say, oh yeah, like I've seen this. Yeah, they are actually testing. I do it every day.
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. Every stage in the validation and recovery process is logged, and there's timestamps against it. So it's very quick that we can look at that data if we need to look at it for historic reasons. What we're also starting to do with this data as well is we're starting to look at anomaly detection and, you know, machine learning sort of techniques around it to say, okay, if a backup all of a sudden takes twice as long to recover, why has that occurred? What's going on there? So this is going to grow and grow. There's a lot of techniques. The clients we're speaking to, they're coming in with some fantastic ideas of what we can do with the systems, stuff we haven't even thought of on our side yet, because there's a lot to this that's developing and growing every single day. So that's CopyAssure in a very, very quick nutshell. The rest of this GUI here just essentially says that it's been validated, so I'll skip past this. But we've taken the Cyber Vault blueprint and we've used the technology within the Flash system to say, okay, this is great technology, but we want to be validating these, and how do we automate it? So combined with Flash system, IBM Blueprint, and Cyber Vault with Chile, that's CopyAssure in a nutshell. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Jack and Ben. That was great and really explained well and straightforwardly. I will send copy of your charts out to everybody by the end of today, and a link to the recording as well. And we have got our next session is on the 19th of May. As long as he's back from his he's had a bit of operation, but he should be back on the 19th of May. And this is about not treating your Power Server like a pet. So I think the point of view here is that we tend to treat our IBM AIX systems very with a lot of respect, and maybe we need to be a little ambitious with them and stretch what we do with them. So that's what that one is about. That should be quite exciting. I say thanks very much, Jack and Ben. And if anybody's got any questions, do email me later on, or you've got contact details for Chile in the presentation as well. So thank you very much.
Cheers, Paul. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay.